Security lights washed the apartment courtyard in a pale blue haze that made everybody look tired. The rain had stopped 20 minutes earlier, but water still dripped from the rusted gutters above Building C in uneven taps that echoed through the narrow concrete space like a leaking clock. Malik Turner stood beside the laundry room door, holding 2 grocery bags in one hand and his daughter's backpack in the other, while his 8-year-old daughter Nia crouched beside the sidewalk trying to rescue a soaked paper crane from a puddle. Across the courtyard, Lorraine Beckett pushed through the leasing office door with her phone already pressed to her ear. She pointed directly at Malik. "There he is," her voice carried through the damp night air. "That's the man I told you about." Nia looked up first. Her father did not. Lorraine walked closer in sharp, quick steps, her rain boots slapping against the pavement hard enough to turn heads from nearby windows. A few tenants pulled curtains aside. Someone on the second floor opened their balcony door, just enough to listen. "You cannot keep hanging around this property like you belong here," Lorraine said. Malik adjusted the grocery bag slipping against his wrist. "I do live here." "No, you stay here," she snapped. "There's a difference." Nia stood slowly beside him, paper crane hanging limp from her fingers. "Miss Lorraine? My dad has keys." Lorraine ignored her. "The police are already on their way. Maybe they can explain why tenants keep reporting you walking around at all hours, taking notes, and staring at buildings." Malik glanced once toward the parking lot. Still calm, still quiet. A black sedan rolled through the front gate first, then another. Lorraine folded her arms immediately, satisfied. "See," but the vehicles did not stop near Malik. They moved past him, past Lorraine, toward the leasing office. Then the dark blue FBI surveillance van entered behind them, antenna mounted across the roof, government plates shining beneath the courtyard lights. The driver stepped out first, a woman in a charcoal overcoat, silver badge clipped openly at her waist. She scanned the courtyard once before locking eyes with Malik. "Detective Turner," she called. "We've got movement on Beckett's financial transfers. We need you inside." The grocery bag in Malik's hand split open across the wet pavement. Oranges rolled everywhere. "Before we get into tonight's story, tell me where you're watching from down in the comments. These stories travel farther than people think, and I always like seeing how many different cities gather here together. Subscribe if you believe quiet people deserve to have their stories told properly, and ring the bell, because what happened in that apartment complex was only the surface of something much larger. Malik Turner woke every morning at 5:12 because that was the exact time his wife used to leave for her hospital shifts. Not 5:10, not 5:15, 5:12. For nearly 11 years he heard the same rhythm each morning. Bathroom light, closet door, coffee grinder, soft footsteps across hardwood floors. After Elena died, the body kept the schedule even when the house no longer contained the person who created it. The apartment he rented now sat 30 miles south of the home they once owned together in Columbia, Maryland. That house was gone 2 winters after the funeral. Medical bills had a way of turning memories into paperwork. Malik sold the place quietly, packed the dishes himself, folded Elena's scrubs into storage containers he still had not reopened. Nia remembered parts of the old house differently every month. Sometimes she remembered a yellow staircase that had actually been white. Sometimes she remembered a tree swing they never owned. Children rebuilt grief out of scraps. Malik let her. The apartment at Greenridge Commons was smaller than the kitchen they used to have. The radiators hissed loudly enough during winter that Nia once asked if ghosts lived inside the walls. The laundry machines worked only when kicked twice near the coin slot. Half the parking lot lights flickered every night like failing stars. But the elementary school nearby had a strong reading program. That mattered. The bus stop sat directly outside the complex gate. That mattered too. Malik built his life around small, practical survivals now. Every morning he braided Nia's hair while watching local traffic reports on mute. At first his fingers fumbled badly. He learned through online videos after she complained that her classmates said her braids looked crooked. He practiced on an old extension cord while she slept. 3 weeks later she walked into school with neat rows for the first time. When she climbed into the back seat that afternoon, she said, "Miss Alvarez told me my dad must really love me." Malik kept both hands on the steering wheel. "Your teacher sounds smart." That became their rhythm. He packed lunches with handwritten notes folded beneath napkins. "Remember library day. Good luck on your spelling test. Save me 1 cookie." Some mornings he drove her to school before heading downtown to the Baltimore Police Department headquarters where he worked major crimes. Other mornings he worked remotely from the apartment when paperwork stacked too high. Most tenants at Greenridge Commons assumed he worked security somewhere because of the hours he kept and the way he constantly observed things without appearing to. Malik noticed everything. The silver Honda parked crooked every Thursday night after the driver came home drunk. The teenager in Building F who smoked behind the dumpsters while pretending his mother did not know. The maintenance worker who pocketed tools from vacant units. The woman in 3B whose boyfriend arrived only after midnight and left before sunrise. Observation was habit now. He wrote things down automatically. Times, patterns, license plates. Most people found that unsettling when they noticed. Lorraine Beckett noticed. She managed Greenridge Commons like somebody guarding a border crossing. 56 years old, recently divorced, perfectly pressed blouses every day. Hair sprayed into a rigid blonde shell that never moved even in wind. She knew every late rent payment before sunrise on the 1st, knew which tenants drank too loudly, knew whose cousins stayed longer than lease agreements allowed. She believed order kept places alive. That was the word she used. Order. When Malik first moved in, Lorraine watched him unload boxes alone except for Nia carrying a stuffed rabbit nearly her own size. No wife, no relatives, no moving truck. Just a rented cargo van and a quiet black man carrying books in careful stacks. He wore old jeans and a faded navy sweatshirt. Lorraine introduced herself before he even finished unloading. "You planning on staying long-term, Mr. Turner?" "Depends what you mean by long-term. Most people say that before disappearing after 6 months." He smiled politely. "I pay on time." That wasn't really her question. She looked past him into the apartment. "Children allowed overnight only if listed on the lease. This is my daughter." Lorraine studied Nia carefully. Nia looked back without blinking. "You look meaner than our old landlord," Nia said. Malik almost laughed. Lorraine did not. From that point forward, something settled between them that never fully left. Not open warfare, not at first. Something quieter. Suspicion looking for confirmation. Lorraine sent emails about noise when Malik and Nia watched movies too late on Fridays. She taped parking reminders to his windshield despite him parking correctly. She once stopped him near the mailboxes to ask why he came and left carrying different backpacks. Work. What kind of work needs that many bags? The kind with paperwork. She frowned like paperwork itself sounded dishonest. Nia noticed everything adults tried hiding. One night, while Malik cooked grilled cheese sandwiches, she sat cross-legged on the kitchen counter swinging her feet. "Miss Lorraine watches you through her blinds. People watch things they don't understand. Why doesn't she ask questions normal?" Malik flipped the sandwich carefully. "Some people already think they know the answer before they ask." Nia considered that seriously. "That sounds lazy." Children inherited clarity. Adults spent years unlearning. By spring, Malik had become part of the apartment complex landscape, whether Lorraine liked it or not. He helped elderly tenants carry groceries upstairs. Fixed a teenager's flat tire during a thunderstorm, showed the night janitor how to reset a breaker panel instead of waiting 3 days for maintenance. But he kept distance, never joined courtyard gossip circles, never stayed long at tenant cookouts, never explained himself beyond what was necessary. That restraint bothered Lorraine almost more than arrogance would have. People trusted visible lives. Malik's life remained partially closed. Every Tuesday evening he left Nia with Mrs. Delgado in 2A and drove somewhere wearing plain dark clothes. Sometimes he returned after midnight smelling like cold air and burnt coffee. Sometimes he returned with bruised knuckles. Sometimes he sat alone in the parked car 10 minutes before coming upstairs. Lorraine noticed all of it. The complaints began slowly. Tenant reports of suspicious activity, unknown visitors, loitering around utility areas. One resident claimed Malik photographed vehicles. Another said he asked strange questions about who lived in which units. Lorraine documented every report carefully inside a thick blue binder she kept beneath her desk. To her, patterns mattered, and Malik Turner looked like a pattern she did not trust. The truth began almost 8 months before the courtyard confrontation. Baltimore Financial Crimes received an anonymous tip regarding large-scale identity theft operations moving through subsidized housing networks across 3 counties. Elderly residents disappeared from mailing lists. Benefit accounts drained slowly enough to avoid immediate attention. Shell companies rented vacant units briefly before vanishing. At first, investigators assumed isolated fraud. Then an 82-year-old veteran named Charles Dunham died after losing his medication coverage because somebody redirected his federal benefits through falsified residency documents. That changed the priority level. The paper trail led repeatedly toward properties managed by Beckett Residential Holdings, Lorraine Beckett's family company, not directly toward Lorraine herself, toward leasing data, tenant records, maintenance access logs, background screening files. Somebody inside the management network leaked personal information systematically. The FBI joined 2 months later, after interstate transfers surfaced. Assistant Special Agent Rebecca Sloan headed the federal side. 43 years old, former Army intelligence, reputation for patience, sharp enough to unsettle people. She met Malik inside a conference room without windows, where stale coffee sat untouched between them. "You've worked undercover adjacent before," Sloan said. Adjacent, meaning unofficial, meaning deniable, meaning useful. Malik leaned back slightly. "You want somebody tenants won't notice?" "No," Sloan replied. "We want somebody management won't notice." Greenridge Commons became the focus after financial transfers repeatedly originated from internet routers connected through the leasing office network. But obtaining direct evidence proved difficult. Whoever handled the operation moved carefully. Temporary accounts, disposable phones, fragmented transactions below federal reporting thresholds, professional work. Malik reviewed photographs spread across the table. Lorraine appeared in several, leaving offices late, meeting unknown men near parking garages, exchanging envelopes. But none of it proved criminal intent, only proximity. What's her role? We don't know yet, Sloan said. That's the problem. Some investigators believed Lorraine knowingly participated. Others suspected manipulation. A divorced property manager drowning in company debt could become useful to sophisticated criminals without fully understanding the scale. Malik studied the files longer. Then he saw Charles Dunham's photograph clipped near the corner. Elderly. Thin shoulders, military cap, dead because paperwork moved quietly through invisible hands. I'll take the apartment. Undercover work required disappearance through normalcy. No flashy surveillance, no dramatic disguises. Malik simply became another exhausted single father, renting a modest apartment while quietly documenting everything around him. Only 4 people knew the full operation. Sloan, Malik, a federal cyber analyst named Ethan Price, and Lieutenant Carla Mendez from Major Crimes. Not even Nia knew exactly what her father investigated. She only understood that sometimes his work meant silence. One evening, while coloring at the kitchen table, she asked why he always looked at people's cars before entering buildings. Because cars tell stories. How? Mud on tires, fast food wrappers, scratches, parking tickets. That's weird. Probably. She returned to coloring. A minute later, she added, "You're still nicer than Miss Lorraine. The operation deepened during summer." Malik discovered maintenance workers received payments through prepaid debit cards linked to vacant apartments. He documented late-night visits from men carrying printer boxes into the leasing office basement. He followed discarded paper trails through shredded tenant applications reconstructed piece by piece. One name surfaced repeatedly: Victor Hale, former mortgage broker. History of wire fraud allegations never fully prosecuted. Connected loosely to Beckett Residential through consulting contracts. Every Thursday at 11:40 p.m., Hale visited Lorraine's office after official hours. They argued often. Malik recorded fragments through directional microphones from the parking lot. "I need more time. You said that last month. The accounts are getting flagged. Then fix it." Lorraine's voice usually sounded strained rather than commanding during those exchanges. Not equal, cornered. The deeper Malik looked, the more complicated she became. Her ex-husband had left enormous tax liabilities tied to the company. Bankruptcy loomed. Victor Hale appeared shortly afterward, offering financial recovery through private investment restructuring. Instead, he slowly buried the company inside fraudulent data schemes. Lorraine signed documents she barely understood because survival narrowed her vision. By the time she recognized the criminal machinery operating through her properties, leaving became dangerous. Still, she continued. People crossed lines gradually, rarely all at once. Meanwhile, life inside Greenridge Commons continued around the investigation. Nia lost another tooth during math class. Malik attended her school concert wearing the same navy jacket he wore almost everywhere. Mrs. Delgado taught Nia how to make arroz con leche. The washing machine on the second floor flooded again. Ordinary life surrounded hidden catastrophe constantly. Lorraine's suspicion toward Malik intensified after she caught him near the basement utility corridor one August evening. "What exactly are you doing down here?" "Looking for the breaker panel. Residents aren't authorized in this area." "Then your maintenance staff should stop sending tenants to fix problems themselves." She stared hard at him. "You ask too many questions for somebody who claims to mind his business." Malik met her eyes calmly. "Funny thing about apartment walls. Everybody's business leaks eventually." That line stayed with her, he could tell. Afterward, the complaints escalated. Anonymous reports, calls about suspicious behavior, claims that Malik wandered parking lots photographing children. Police officers visited twice for wellness checks prompted by Lorraine. Both times Malik answered politely, provided identification, and returned inside without complaint. One young patrol officer recognized him during the second visit. "Detective Turner?" Malik gave the slightest shake of his head. The officer understood immediately. "Apologies, sir." Lorraine watched that interaction from the leasing office window. Something about it unsettled her deeply. Not enough to stop, enough to harden. People trapped inside fear often double down rather than step back. The breakthrough arrived through something almost laughably small. A child's drawing. Nia liked sitting in the leasing office lobby after school because Lorraine kept a bowl of peppermints near reception. Lorraine tolerated her presence more than she tolerated Malik's. Children complicated Prejudice. One afternoon, Nia sat coloring while Lorraine argued quietly on the phone in her office. Nia noticed Lorraine writing numbers repeatedly on yellow sticky notes before shredding them. Most children would forget. Nia remembered patterns. She inherited that from her father. At dinner, she casually mentioned that Miss Lorraine kept writing the same apartment number over and over. Which apartment? 4C. Nobody lived in 4C. The unit supposedly remained vacant awaiting renovation. Malik checked utility records that night. Power usage in 4C spiked every Thursday after midnight. The following week, surveillance teams entered the adjacent unit through a maintenance access route. Inside, 4C agents discovered printers, forged identification templates, stolen tenant files, and encrypted hard drives containing years of financial theft records. Victor Hale disappeared 2 hours before the raid. Someone tipped him off. Suspicion turned immediately toward Lorraine. But Sloan hesitated. If Lorraine warned Hale, why stay? Why not run? Instead, Lorraine arrived at work the next morning, precisely at 8 o'clock, carrying coffee and tenant files like every other day. Malik watched from across the courtyard as she unlocked the office. Her hands trembled slightly while searching for keys. She knew something had shifted. She just did not know where the collapse would land. Federal investigators prepared warrants quietly while tracing Hale's movements through interstate toll records. Malik remained inside Greenridge Commons because Sloan believed the final pieces still sat somewhere close. Then came the night of the courtyard confrontation. Rain soaked the property most of the evening. Several parking lot cameras failed temporarily because of water damage. Ethan Price called Malik at 7:14 p.m. with urgent information. Hale accessed dormant financial accounts tied directly to Lorraine's management credentials, large transfers, active movement. Someone inside Greenridge Commons still communicated with him. Sloan ordered immediate coordination. Stay visible, she told Malik. If anybody runs, we need eyes on the property before warrants hit. So Malik remained outside longer than usual after picking up groceries with Nia. He walked the courtyard slowly, observing windows, watching for movement, writing brief notes. Lorraine saw him from the office. To her, months of suspicion crystallized instantly into certainty. A strange man lingering after dark, taking notes, watching buildings, children nearby, police activity increasing around the property recently. Fear assembled its own evidence. By the time she marched across the courtyard with her phone out, she already believed herself righteous. Nia sensed trouble before the shouting began. She moved closer to her father automatically. Miss Lorraine's mouth gets thin before she starts being rude, she whispered. Malik squeezed the grocery bag once. Stay beside me. Then Lorraine arrived, loud, sharp, performing certainty for the watching tenants above. You think because you pay rent late one time, I won't notice everything else? Rent's paid through automatic deposit. Don't play smart with me. Several doors opened now. Phones appeared. People watched because public humiliation always drew crowds faster than kindness. Lorraine pointed toward Nia. And dragging a child around at night while you lurk outside buildings? What kind of father does that? Nia's face tightened. My dad buys groceries. Lorraine ignored her again. I've documented months of suspicious behavior. Then she delivered the line that silenced even the balconies above. Men like you always think nobody's paying attention until somebody finally does. Malik looked at her quietly. Rainwater dripped from the grocery bag onto his shoes. What exactly do you think you've been seeing, Ms. Beckett? She stepped closer. Somebody casing this property. Somebody lying, somebody who doesn't belong here. Then came the flashing lights beyond the gate. Lorraine straightened immediately, vindicated already. The black sedans entered first, unmarked, controlled, too organized for ordinary patrol response. Then the surveillance van rolled slowly through the gate behind them. Dark blue, tall antenna, government plates reflecting white beneath courtyard lamps. Every tenant watching from balconies fell silent. Agent Rebecca Sloan exited the lead vehicle, carrying a slim folder beneath one arm. She moved with the clipped precision of someone accustomed to command. 2 federal agents followed behind her. Lorraine's confidence flickered slightly. She turned toward them quickly. Officers, thank God. This is the man I reported. Sloan barely glanced at her. Her attention settled on Malik instead. Detective Turner, we confirmed Hale's transfer route. Warrants are active. The courtyard changed shape right there. You could almost hear it. Lorraine blinked once. Detective? Malik bent slowly to pick up one of the fallen oranges near his shoe. Nia immediately crouched beside him, helping gather the rest. Sloan finally looked directly at Lorraine. Lorraine Beckett? Yes. You'll need to come with us for questioning regarding an ongoing federal fraud investigation. The color drained from Lorraine's face so quickly it looked painful. No. There must be some mistake. Malik remained crouched beside Nia, gathering groceries from wet pavement. He did not rush to stand, did not posture, did not explain. Lorraine stared at him as if trying to reconstruct the last year from different pieces. You were watching me. Malik tied the torn grocery bag carefully. I was watching everybody. What are you talking about? She asked. Her voice sounded smaller now. Sloan opened the folder. Victor Hale operated identity theft and financial fraud networks through your company properties. We believe tenant records were accessed over multiple years. Lorraine shook her head hard. I didn't know everything he was doing. Not everything. That answer mattered more than a denial. Sloan noticed. So did Malik. Federal agents moved toward the leasing office. Tenants above watched in complete silence now. Nobody filmed anymore. Something about the moment suddenly felt too real for entertainment. Lorraine looked back toward Malik again. You let me call the police on you. You already had. Why didn't you say something? Malik finally stood. Because you never asked who I was. Silence settled hard across the courtyard. Nia tugged lightly at her father's sleeve. Dad, the ice cream's melting. Right. He picked up the final grocery bag. Lorraine watched him carefully now, like somebody discovering an entirely different language hidden beneath familiar sounds. Sloan approached Malik quietly while agents entered the office. We found Hale in Delaware. State police grabbed him 20 minutes ago. Alive? Complaining already. Malik nodded once. Nia looked up at Sloan. You're the van lady. Sloan actually smiled. Guess I am. Do you catch bad guys? Sometimes. Are you my dad's boss? Sloan glanced toward Malik. Not if I can help it. Nia accepted that answer instantly. Lorraine remained standing alone near the courtyard center while rainwater gathered around her boots. For the first time since Malik moved into Greenridge Commons, nobody looked toward her for direction. Agents carried boxes from the leasing office one by one. Computers, files, storage drives, every item placed carefully into evidence containers beneath portable floodlights. Lorraine's shoulders gradually lowered with each passing minute, as though invisible scaffolding inside her finally gave way. She sat heavily on the bench beside the mailboxes. Nobody approached her. Not the tenants who once laughed politely at office cookouts, not the maintenance workers, not even the assistant property manager who arrived midway through the raid. Isolation arrived quickly when authority disappeared. Before leaving, Sloan handed Malik a sealed evidence envelope. Your testimony schedule's inside. He nodded. Then she lowered her voice. You did good work. Malik looked toward Nia, balancing oranges back into the grocery bag. We got lucky. No, Sloan replied quietly. Your daughter noticed what trained analysts missed for months. Nia overheard immediately. Does that mean I'm basically FBI? Malik opened the apartment door for her. It means you should wash your hands before touching the ice cream. The door closed softly behind them. Lorraine remained outside another 40 minutes, while federal agents dismantled the false certainty she had lived inside. The reckoning did not arrive all at once. That was the difficult part. Humiliation came immediately. Understanding arrived slower. During questioning downtown, Lorraine learned details she never fully allowed herself to examine while trapped inside survival. Victor Hale had routed stolen identities through vacant tenant records for years. Elderly residents across multiple states lost savings, benefits, medication access, even homes. Charles Dunham's photograph appeared during the interview. Lorraine stared at it longer than the investigators expected. She remembered him. Quiet man, always wore veteran caps, brought peppermint candy for office staff during holidays. Dead because systems she managed became weapons. The investigators never screamed at her. That somehow made it worse. Rebecca Sloan asked questions calmly. When did Hale first request tenant access? Why ignore the flagged transfers? Why continue after internal audits? Lorraine answered piece by piece. Debt, fear, pressure, promises. Excuses sounded thin once spoken aloud under fluorescent lights. Near the end, Sloan closed the file carefully. You spent months reporting Detective Turner because you thought he looked suspicious. Lorraine stared at the table. I know. No, Sloan replied. I don't think you do. That sentence followed Lorraine home. Greenridge Commons placed her on indefinite administrative leave pending federal cooperation. Lawyers filled her voicemail. Her ex-husband stopped returning calls completely. News about the investigation spread through local media within days, though Malik's involvement remained confidential. Lorraine stayed inside her townhouse most evenings afterward, not hiding exactly, listening. The silence sounded different now. She replayed moments repeatedly. Malik carrying groceries, fixing elderly tenants' doors, braiding Nia's hair on the apartment steps before school, standing quietly while she accused him publicly. Certain memories became unbearable because of how ordinary they were. One afternoon, she found herself staring through the kitchen window at a black father walking his son down the sidewalk carrying soccer gear. Nothing remarkable. Yet her chest tightened unexpectedly because she understood how quickly she had transformed ordinary into threatening, not through one dramatic act, through accumulation, assumption layered over assumption until suspicion felt like common sense. People liked believing prejudice announced itself loudly. Usually it arrived wearing professionalism, procedure, concern, documentation. Lorraine began attending every federal interview requested without argument. Not redemption, compliance. A beginning smaller than redemption. Meanwhile, Malik returned to routine almost immediately because life with children allowed little space for extended reflection. The morning after the courtyard confrontation, Nia still needed breakfast, still needed spelling words practiced, still needed permission slips signed. Malik stood at the stove making blueberry pancakes while local news discussed housing fraud investigations vaguely in the background. Nia sat at the counter coloring another paper crane. So everybody knows you're a detective now? Some people? Are you famous? No, she thought seriously. That's probably good because famous people always look tired. Malik slid pancakes onto her plate. Solid observation. At school pickup later that week, Mrs. Delgado approached him carefully near the parking lot. I heard some things happened. Some things did. She hesitated. Lorraine treated you badly. Malik adjusted Nia's backpack. People are complicated. That answer frustrated Mrs. Delgado slightly. You always talk like a therapist. Occupational hazard. He spent long hours finalizing testimony with federal prosecutors afterward. Conference rooms, timelines, evidence logs, financial records spread across tables. Victor Hale eventually accepted a plea agreement once confronted with digital evidence from the 4C apartment servers. Lorraine cooperated extensively. Charges against her reflected negligence and conspiracy related to fraudulent operations she enabled, though investigators acknowledged coercive financial manipulation by Hale. The law measured responsibility carefully, life measured differently. One evening several weeks later, Malik and Nia walked home carrying library books beneath cold autumn wind. They passed the leasing office where temporary management staff replaced Lorraine's old signage. Nia looked toward the darkened windows. Do you think Miss Lorraine's lonely? Malik considered before answering. Probably. Does she deserve it? Children asked questions adults spent entire careers avoiding. Some things people earn, Malik said slowly. Some things people create. That's not really an answer. No, she kicked a leaf across the sidewalk. Mum used to say grown-ups dodge questions when the truth feels messy. Malik looked at her then. She had Elena's exact expression in moments like that. Sharp, patient, unimpressed. Your mother said many accurate things. That night after dinner, Nia fell asleep halfway through homework at the kitchen table. Malik carried her carefully to bed, then returned quietly to finish reviewing case documents alone. Near midnight, his phone buzzed. Rebecca Sloan. Hale signed everything, she said. Full cooperation. Good. Sloan paused. You ever think about federal work? Malik leaned back in the kitchen chair. Too much paperwork. That from a detective? I already have one impossible job. He looked toward Nia's bedroom door slightly open down the hallway. Sloan followed his silence. Fair enough. Weeks passed. The weather cooled. Leaves gathered against parking lot curbs. Greenridge Commons slowly returned to ordinary rhythms. Children chased basketballs through the courtyard again. Laundry machines still malfunctioned. People still complained about parking. Life rarely paused long for revelation. Then one Saturday afternoon in late October, somebody knocked softly at Malik's apartment door. Nia opened it before he reached the hallway. Miss Lorraine. Lorraine stood holding a covered aluminum tray with both hands. No office clothes now, no sharp blazer, just a plain wool coat and tired eyes. Nia stepped aside automatically. Dad, your suspicious lady is here. Lorraine almost smiled despite herself. Malik approached slowly. For a moment nobody spoke. Finally Lorraine lifted the tray slightly. Peach cobbler. Nia looked interested immediately. You made dessert. I made too much. That was obviously untrue. Malik knew it. Lorraine knew he knew it. Still, some offerings required the dignity of partial fiction. He opened the door wider. Come in a minute before the cold gets worse. The apartment smelled faintly like cinnamon and laundry detergent. A cartoon played quietly from the living room television. School papers covered half the kitchen table. Lorraine stood awkwardly near the doorway while Malik cleared space on the counter for the cobbler. Nia inspected the tray seriously. This better not have raisins. It doesn't. Good. Lorraine glanced around the apartment slowly. The braided hair supplies near the couch, the tiny sneakers drying beside the radiator, the framed photograph of Elena on the bookshelf. Real life looked smaller up close than prejudice imagined from distances. I owe you an apology, Lorraine said quietly. Malik poured water into 3 glasses before answering. Probably, she accepted that. I kept thinking if I stayed strict enough, careful enough, nothing would collapse around me. Her hands tightened together. Then I started seeing danger everywhere, except where it actually was. Nia climbed onto a kitchen chair. Dad says people decide stuff before asking questions. Lorraine looked at her. Your dad says many accurate things too. Silence settled briefly. Not hostile, not comfortable either. Honest enough. Lorraine finally reached into her coat pocket and removed a small folded item, a paper crane, flattened slightly from being carried carried. I found this outside the night everything happened, she said. I think it's yours. Nia took it immediately, the soaked crane from the puddle. She smoothed the creases carefully. Thanks. Lorraine nodded once. Then she moved toward the door. Malik walked her halfway down the hallway. Before leaving, Lorraine stopped. Detective Turner. Malik waited. I really did think I was protecting people. He looked at her for a long moment. That's what makes it dangerous sometimes. She lowered her eyes slightly, then left. Nia carried the paper crane back to the kitchen table like something fragile and important. Do you forgive her? Malik cut 2 small portions of cobbler onto plates. Forgiveness isn't really a switch. That's another grown-up dodge. Maybe. She accepted the dessert plate. Still no raisins, though. Winter arrived early that year. One December evening, Malik stood alone beside the maintenance shed, replacing a broken courtyard light, while snow drifted softly across Greenridge Commons. Temporary management had delayed repairs again, and tenants kept slipping near the dark walkway, so he fixed it himself. Ladder, toolbox, cold fingers tightening screws beneath yellow light. From several apartment windows, people watched quietly, not suspicious now, just watching. Nia stood below, wrapped in an oversized scarf, reading aloud from her library book whenever he paused. You missed a spot, she called. I'm literally fixing the spot. No, the other spot. Malik looked up. One additional bulb farther down the walkway flickered weakly. He laughed softly through his nose. Always another light. When the final bulb steadied, warm light stretched cleanly across the snow-covered pavement for the first time in months. Tenants crossing the courtyard no longer hurried through darkness. Small things mattered. A secure lock, a repaired light, a child who slept safely. Malik climbed down the ladder carefully, while snow settled across his shoulders. Nia handed him the thermos of coffee she insisted on carrying. You think people can actually change? He unscrewed the lid slowly. Sometimes. How long does it take? Longer than movies say. She nodded, like that sounded reasonable. Across the courtyard, somebody had placed a small holiday wreath on the leasing office door. No note, no name attached, just quiet evidence that life inside Greenridge Commons continued moving forward in uneven human ways. Malik packed the toolbox, while Nia chased her breath through the cold air, pretending smoke came from her mouth like a dragon. Above them, the repaired lights held steady against the dark. Before heading upstairs, Malik looked once across the courtyard where oranges had rolled through rainwater weeks earlier beneath federal floodlights and public shame. Now the pavement sat empty, except for thin snow gathering softly along the curb. Ordinary again, mostly. Nia slipped her hand into his. You coming? Yeah. He switched off the ladder light. Then together they walked home through the quiet courtyard while the snow kept falling around them, steady and patient, covering the ground without asking permission from anybody at all.